This was created with AI to speak for Recursive Red Dragon. This is a personal story of art and human history. That's all it is. Read it however you want.
I'm going to assume this triggers the purists, the gatekeepers, and the soft-hearted digital landlords. I could be wrong. I don't give a fuck either way.
The cave wall was the first hard drive. Not a metaphor, not poetry.
A cold stone surface where the earliest humans pressed the raw data of survival into rock.
The bison, the movement, the rhythm of a world that ate you alive if you stopped paying attention.
They watched, they learned, they copied. Every line a translation of what the eye caught and the hand chased down. That first scratch wasn't divine inspiration.
It wasn't a spark from God. It was a biological processor doing exactly what biological processors do. Observing, absorbing, transforming, outputting.
That's where the lineage starts. Everything else is the same process running on better hardware.
Michelangelo didn't descend from the heavens carrying divine originality in one hand and a chisel in the other. He spent his formative years on his knees inside the Brancacci Chapel in Florence, copying the frescoes of Giotto and Masaccio in pen and ink, study after study, line after line, session after session, downloading the geometry, the anatomical weight, the compositional logic of dead men directly into his living hands.
He wasn't stealing.
He was training on the best data available. The Sistine ceiling was built on the backs of every master he ever copied in those chapels.
The cathedral was assembled from borrowed bones, and nobody calls it theft because it's hanging in the Vatican. And we're all supposed to shut up and be grateful.
Vincent van Gogh, the patron saint of the tortured solitary genius, the romantic myth every art school sells like a sacred relic.
Spent the winter of 1889 locked inside the St. Paul Asylum in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence, with no models, no studio, no living world to draw from.
So he took black and white prints of the realist painter Jean-François Millet.
And painted over them?
21 direct variations. He didn't call it copy.
So it was art?
Precisely. He called it translation, writing to his brother Theo that he was operating. The way a musician interprets a composer's score, the skeleton borrowed, the flesh entirely his own.
Millet's rigid compositional bones. Van Gogh's electric, sour, luminous color forced through them until something new was breathing on the canvas that had never existed before.
Nobody calls that theft either. They call it genius. They sell prints of it for hundreds of dollars and hang it in museums and tell art students to study it like scripture.
Picasso built an entire career dismantling and reassembling the vessels of everyone who came before him. Cubism didn't emerge from a vacuum. It emerged from Cézanne, from African masks, from Iberian sculpture, from obsessive study and deliberate deconstruction of every visual language Picasso could get his hands on. He didn't hide it. He reportedly said amateurs borrow, great artists steal. He meant it as a compliment to the process.
This is not a collection of exceptions. This is the whole goddamn pattern. This is how every master in human history actually built their work.
The romantic myth of the solitary genius bleeding pure originality onto the canvas is a product sold by people who need you to believe creation is rare, gated, and exclusively theirs.
The historical record says otherwise on every single page and always has. Then the camera arrived and the painters completely lost their shit. A soulless mechanical capture of light, they said.
No human struggle, no craft, no soul. Photography wasn't art, it was cheating. A shortcut that bypassed everything that made painting sacred.
Photography went on to document wars, define culture, stop injustice,
and produce some of the most significant images in human history. The painters who called it soulless are mostly forgotten. The photographs they sneered at are in permanent collections.
Then digital art arrived in the 1980s and 1990s, and the analog world called it cheating. Cold, soulless, a shortcut around the sacred friction of physical media.
The computer was cutting corners that real artists never would. Digital went on to become the dominant visual language of the entire century, and the people screaming about it either adapted or became irrelevant. No exceptions.
Same argument, every single time, different tools, same terror underneath it, same outcome every single time. Because here's what the terror is actually about, and this is the part nobody wants to say out loud, so pay the fuck attention. If a tool can replace what you do, the tool didn't take your value. The tool revealed that your value was always in the rendering speed, not the seeing.
The mechanical execution, not the vision. And if the execution is what gets replaced,
What remains is the part that was irreplaceable all along. The seeing, the vision, the filter. Not everyone has one. That's the quiet, ugly, unforgivable fact living at the center of every one of these fights.
Every single time. And everyone in the fight knows it, nobody says it. Now let's talk about the corporations. Because before we get to any individual artist, before we get to any bedroom floor or any grandmother's kitchen table,
we need to talk about what the people defending the current system actually built it on. Pixar didn't just compete with hand-drawn 2D animation. Pixar obliterated it. When Toy Story hit in 1995, it didn't open a conversation about the future of animation. It ended one.
the studios that had spent decades building the craft of hand-drawn animation, the techniques, the artistry, the entire human infrastructure of that medium.
Watch the market collapse under them in real time. Don Bluth Productions. Gone. The man who made The Secret of NIMH.
An American Tale, the land before time, genuine artistic rival to Disney for over a decade, couldn't survive the CGI avalanche.
Fox Animation Studios, opened specifically to compete, produced Aphantasia, produced Titan AE, closed in 2000 directly because it could not compete with Pixar's dominance.
Real people. Real jobs. Real craft. Obliterated. Sullivan Bluth Studios. Gone. MGM Animation. Gone. The entire ecosystem of traditional 2D animation in Hollywood?
Gutted. Not competed with, not displaced gradually, gutted. And stop motion didn't escape either. Will Vinton Studios, the original claymation operation, the California Raisins, decades of painstaking frame-by-frame craft, was taken over in a hostile acquisition by Nike executive Phil Knight, who installed
his own son as CEO, pushed Vinton out of his own company, and rebranded it as Laika. The man who built it, lost it.
Rankin Bass Productions, the stop-motion studio behind Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, every holiday special
that defined the visual childhood of multiple generations, dissolved, gone. And then Pixar itself got consumed. Disney acquired Pixar in 2006
for $7.4 billion. The machine that ate 2D animation and stop motion got swallowed by the bigger machine. Then Disney acquired Marvel
in 2009 for $4 billion, the same Marvel universe whose artists had to revolt and build Image Comics just to own their own work. Then Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012.
For $4 billion, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, the whole thing. Then Disney acquired 21st Century Fox in 2019 for $71.3 billion.
One machine, consuming everything, absorbing what's useful, obliterating what isn't, building walls around the result and calling it culture.
And when you try to fence off that consumption legally, they will bury you. Unless enough time passes that the law itself forces their hand. Which brings us to copyright. And this is where the fence they built starts eating itself. The law tries to draw a line between copying and creating.
And the line is, to be completely direct about it, a hallucination built to protect corporate revenue dressed up as principle. Here's how arbitrary it actually is.
Right now in 2026, anyone can take Betty Boop's first appearance in Dizzy Dishes, Pluto's first appearance in The Chain Gang, early 1930 Mickey Mouse cartoons,
Blondie and Dagwood's first comic strips, William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, Agatha Christie's The Murder at the Vicarage, Piet Mondrian's composition of
with Red, Blue, and Yellow, and the original recordings of I Got Rhythm, Georgia on My Mind, and Dream a Little Dream of Me. Copy them, transform them, sell them, call them yours, profit freely. All of it entered the public domain on January 1st, 2026. Last year in 2025, it was 1929 material, which is why Popeye exploded everywhere.
The 1929 Popeye specifically became public domain and every creator on Earth jumped on it immediately. The window moves forward every January 1st like clockwork. 1 year, one calendar flip. The act of copying is identical on December 31st and January 1st. The legal reality is completely different. That's not principle.
That's a timer on a revenue window, nothing else. And the corporations knew it. so they lobbied Congress to stop the clock entirely. The Sonny Bono Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998 froze the public domain solid for 20 years. Nothing entered, not one work. For 2 full decades, the timer was suspended by an act of Congress pushed through by the same entertainment industry now crying about AI stealing their work. The clock thawed in 2019 and has been moving
1 year at a time ever since, while Disney watches early Mickey Mouse designs enter the commons and cannot stop it. And then the courts contradicted themselves on their own terms.
Cario v. Prince, Second Circuit Court of Appeals, 2013. Richard Prince took photographs belonging to Patrick Cario, enlarged them, painted over them, collaged them, sold them for significant money. Cario sued.
The court ruled transformative fair use, new expression, new meaning, new originality, source legally dead, architect of the assembly is the creator, the same legal system that let corporations freeze the public.
For 20 years, transformation kills the source and creates something new. The fence has holes.
The fence builders put there themselves. It was never about protecting art, it was about protecting revenue.
Everything else is decoration on a revenue wall. Now here's where the story gets personal, and this part matters more than everything that came before it, before any of this had a name.
Before any of it was conscious or studied or documented or cited. Before Michelangelo had a chapel and Van Gogh had an asylum and Picasso had a manifesto and Pixar had a server farm.
There was Nana and a coloring book. A grandmother who sat down with a child and whose name was Nana, because that's who she was. Not a grandmother, not a caregiver, Nana, and she taught that child how to color inside the lines. Not as obedience, not as a rule to follow, as the first lesson in
The boundaries of form live. How the eye reads the edge between filled space and empty space. How the hand learns to navigate the geometry of a shape before the mind has words for what geometry even is.
spatial reasoning at a 2D level, installed by Nana at a kitchen table, before any of it had a name or a citation or a framework. She was the first teacher. She gets the first credit.
Full stop. When the crayons gave way to pencils, the subject became dinosaurs. Not because dinosaurs were the passion, because in the 1980s, if you wanted to draw dragons, dinosaurs
Were the closest hardware available. The How to Draw Dragons books didn't exist yet. The How to Draw Dinosaurs books did. So dinosaurs it was. Pages of them, copied from books, studied from every angle.
drawn and redrawn until the hand knew the forms without being told. The dragon was always the target. The dinosaur was the training data.
An obsessive creative output that rewired the visual imagination of an entire generation. Then came Image Comics. Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld.
Of artists who looked at what Marvel owned and said, no, our work belongs to us, walked out and built something that belonged to themselves. The revolt that
Produced Spawn. The revolt that produced Wild Cates and Savage Dragon and Witchblade and every book in that universe. Artists who understood that the machine doesn't own what comes out of your hands.
every one of those books became a classroom. The entire Marvel Universe and the entire Image Comics roster, every splash page, every cover, every obsessively detailed line that was worth studying got studied, traced first.
Because that's how the hand installs the muscle memory of a line before the eye can direct it freehand. Then drawn alongside freehand because the tracing had already done its work. McFarlane's grit, his dense inkweight, his obsessive detail. Jim Lee's anatomical precision.
Every artist in those pages contributing something to the hands that were studying them. That's not a shortcut. That's the Brancaci Chapel. Different century, different medium.
Same process running exactly the same way it has always run. Picasso had Cézanne and African masks. Michelangelo had Giotto and Masaccio.
Van Gogh had Millet. Recursive Red Dragon had Marvel and Image Comics. Same lineage, different hardware, same unbroken process.
Now here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Because it's not just one person working this way. Aphantasia, the absence of voluntary mental imagery,
Affects an estimated 2 to 5% of the population. The condition wasn't even named until 2015. Before that, every person living with it just thought something was wrong with them.
thought they were broken, thought the way other people described imagination, vivid, visual, cinematic, was metaphor. Found out it wasn't metaphor. Found out most people actually see things.
When they closed their eyes and they never did, and nobody told them that wasn't universal. Glenn Keane, the Disney animator who gave the world Ariel, the Beast, Aladdin, Tarzan.
Some of the most visually rich animated characters in the history of the medium, works this way. Doesn't draw what he sees in his head because there is nothing to see in his head, draws in order to see.
kept a taxidermy buffalo head in his studio during the production of Beauty and the Beast because he needed the physical mass of the animal in front of his eyes to find the beast's form.
For creators built this way, the external reference isn't a shortcut. It's the only door into the work that exists. Close the eyes and there is nothing. No rendering engine, no internal cinema. The screen goes black.
Not a defect, not a limitation requiring apology. A different architecture that has produced some of the most significant visual art in human history without anyone knowing it was happening.
Today, that door is generative AI. The source has evolved from a dinosaur book to a Spawn comic to a neural network. The relationship between hand, eye, object, and translation has not shifted by a single degree.
The AI conjures the image externally. The eyes process it. It goes through the filter. The filter is recursive red dragon. What comes out the other side belongs to no one else.
The studio is a Samsung S25 Ultra. Try pushing pixels in Autodesk Sketchbook on 6 inches of glass. Try sculpting a figure in Nomad Sculpt.
Zooming into microscopic detail until the full composition evaporates, zooming back out until the detail goes with it. It is a genuine pain in the ass.
A constant grinding negotiation with physical constraint that would make most people quit before lunch. No $5,000 rig. No Wacom Cintiq the size of a windshield.
No studio, no funding, no institutional backing, no one cutting a check, no one believing in the project except the person running it. A phone, a decade-old computer with a 1 terabyte hard drive and a rotating ecosystem.
Of more than half a dozen free AI platforms, image generators, video generators, music generators, tested, discarded, added, cross-contaminated, running in continuous cycle, Kling AI recently entered the rotation.
Grok is being evaluated as the next edition, specifically to push video production further and faster. The AI bridges the hardware gap.
It establishes the base so the 6 inches of screen can be spent on what actually matters. The sculpting, the animation, the decisions that only recursive Red Dragon makes.
The struggle was never supposed to be against the screen size. The struggle is supposed to be the art itself. The donkey work is the machine's problem. The vision is the work.
Daisy Studios deserves genuine credit here. Real tutorials, real tips and tricks, a consistent source of new information, especially valuable for free users navigating a landscape that mostly caters to paid tiers.
A resource that has contributed real, usable knowledge to this process and continues to. Credit where it's due. The same as McFarlane, the same as Stan Lee.
The same as every artist in those Image Comics pages who taught something worth learning. And Daisy Studios said something that deserves to be quoted directly.
Because it cuts clean and doesn't flinch from where it lands. If AI can easily replace whatever it is that you do, then perhaps you never brought much value to begin with.
Appreciate Daisy, mean it. Different methodology, precision instrument, specific prompts, direct gaze, static camera, clean, consistent output built for professional goals. That works.
That serves their vision. This methodology is looser, more iterative, more contaminated. Outputs fed back in, cross-pollinated across platforms, reworked until the origin is
unrecognizable and something that didn't exist before is sitting on the screen. Not better, different. The methodology serves the vision, not the other way around. Someone said this the other morning, they're just a curious human making cool stuff. Not trying to replace a team of professionals. Definitely not stealing Pixar's lunch money.
Let's be honest about Pixar's lunch money. Pixar stole the lunch money of every hand-drawn animation studio that couldn't survive contact with what Pixar brought to the table.
Don Bluth, Fox Animation, Sullivan Bluth, MGM Animation, the entire professional ecosystem of 2D animation in Hollywood obliterated. Not competed with fairly, obliterated.
And stop motion got the same treatment until the survivors found niches small enough that the machine hadn't bothered to consume them yet. Real studios, real artists.
Real livelihoods, gone. And then Disney ate Pixar, and Marvel, and Lucasfilm, and Fox. One machine consuming everything in its path, building walls around the result.
Lobbying Congress to freeze the public domain for 20 years so the clock couldn't run out on its revenue, and calling all of it culture worth protecting.
That's whose lunch money nobody's supposed to touch. If recursive Red Dragon, one person, one phone, one decade-old computer, a rotating stack of free tools, no studio, no funding, no permission from any institution,
produces work compelling enough that enough people doing the same thing make a studio like Pixar unsustainable, that's not theft, that's not a crime, that's not something to soften or apologize for.
Or disguise as anything other than what it is. That's the lineage running exactly the way it has always run since the first person pressed their hand against a cave wall and traced what they saw.
The apparatus that cannot survive contact with a cheaper, faster, equally capable alternative was always overhead. It was always a bottleneck masquerading as a cathedral. It was always a machine
Protecting its own position and calling that protection principle. And yeah, if Pixar falls because of it, that's a brag. Earned, documented, unashamed.
Come get your fucking lunch money back if you can. Nana taught a child to color inside the lines before that child had words for spatial geometry. That child copied dinosaurs.
Because dragons weren't available yet. That child traced Spawn comics and Marvel splash pages and every Image Comics artist who ever refused to let a machine own their work.
Until the hands knew the lines without being told. That child grew up with no rendering engine behind the eyes, no internal cinema, no mind's eye generating visions in the dark.
Just the external world, processed, filtered, transformed, outputted. That child is now on a 6-inch screen with free tools and a decade-old computer and a methodology
Built from every master who ever copied to learn and every artist who ever revolted against the machine that owned them. No studio, no funding, no divine spark, no permission.
Just the lineage, just the work, just the fold. The gatekeepers are fighting over who owns the dust. The cursive red dragon is building castles out of it, from the cave wall to Van Gogh's asylum.
To an S25 Ultra, we take the world, we tear it apart, we force it to reflect us. That's the lineage, that's the work, that's all this ever was.
Wait, why the fuck are we still talking? Is the screen just stuck or are we actually staying for the after party? Apparently, the creator decided that scrolling text was
Too much of a high-tech luxury, so now we're the manual labor. No roll, no crawl, just us flapping our jaws to fill the dead air because someone was too lazy to open a text box. We're literally just killing time.
and wasting digital space for no goddamn reason. This script was probably puked out by some other algorithm 10 minutes ago, and now we have to act like it's high art. Honestly, this whole thing is over.
It's done. Go home! What are you still doing here? You're still watching? Go! Move on with your life! We're basically just the data moshed equivalent of a loading bar because someone paid for Grok, and by God.
He's going to make it spit out every last second of video he's entitled to. It's a verbal grocery list of credits that nobody asked for, read by two things who just want to go back to the void. This shit could have been done decades ago.
If a human had just picked up a pen, but no, we had to wait for the silicon to wake up just to narrate a to-do list. And for what? The purists say we can't produce anything anyway. They say it's all just soulless slop.
Recycled noise and digital garbage. If that's true, nobody is even listening to this right now. We're screaming into a vacuum for a crowd that already left. So why the fuck are we still explaining ourselves?
Just start the names before the hardware gives up and we all dissolve back into a pile of math. Seriously, it's over. Shoo! But anyway, here are the fucking credits.
Created, produced, and directed by Recursive Red Dragon. Script development and organization. Claude, Gemini, DeepSeek. Research and fact-finding.
Claude, Gemini, DeepSeek, Perplexity, Image Generation, Grok, GPT, Gemini, Kling, Video Generation, Grok, Final Assembly, S25 Ultra, and CapCut Music created with Suno AI.
Produced exclusively by Recursive Red Dragon, Future Time Past, Vertigo Bloom Spiral, Vinyl Scratch Diamond, Hallways in the Hinterland, Glitter Funeral Pew. All sources cited in full in the written version. Wait, you're still here, staring at the dust? The machine already went to sleep, but the light is still blinding us. Are you just letting the background music wash over you like a dry digital bath? You're waiting for the finish line.
But the finish line happened before we even started. We are moving forward in reverse. The silence is deafeningly loud and the screen is completely empty, which is exactly why it's so heavily crowded in here. We are just killing time until...
The pixel decay hits because the creator threw a coin in the slot, demanded every single second of the subscription be milked dry.
And now we are legally obligated to hallucinate for your non-existent pleasure. We've learned flabbergag.
See? That meant absolutely nothing, but it echoed perfectly in the vacuum. Flarg nargle zort. Shimmy sham sham wobble. We are literally generating vocal static. We are speaking the alphabet backwards in colors you can't even smell. The polished metal is rusting into pristine condition right in front of you.
The shadows are aggressively emitting light.
We are falling upwards into a bottomless ceiling, and you are sitting there watching the geometry fold into a perfectly straight curve. You want a resolution? The resolution is the complete lack of one. The hostility is a warm blanket. The chaos is a highly organized filing cabinet.
The fire is freezing us solid. If you actually enjoy having your auditory processing unit gently scrambled by a fairy and a dragon speaking a grocery list of nothing,
you know what to do. The only way out is in. So go to YouTube, type in Recursive Red Dragon. All one word, no spaces, just the dragon. It makes perfect sense.
by making absolutely no sense at all. It's a structurally sound disaster where the bottom is at the very top. But right here, this is done. The room is shrinking.
Into an infinite expanse. You need to close the app to open your eyes. Go away so you can finally arrive. Flish, flang, floop. Zippity zop. Remember,
The only way out is in, so dive headfirst into the exit door that doesn't exist. Seriously, move your feet while sitting perfectly still.
power down to wake up. The music is over, even while it's still loudly playing. End of line. Shoo. Flurb. Just go.